England, with its undisputed control of the seas, was supposed to take care of sea warfare, and France, with its great army, of land warfare. France ended the last war victoriously in the trenches, so the natural tendency was to build bigger and better trenches, culminating in that super-colossal trench, the Trench de Luxe, the Maginot Line. In these fantastic underground fortresses were stored enough supplies to withstand a siege of years. The military leaders assured the French people that this mighty wall of steel and concrete made France impregnable. Those who dared criticize this plan of defense were sharply reminded that the French General Staff was the greatest on earth. In the meantime, Hitler was scheming a conquest based on lightning speed and surprise. His long-range artillery took wings. Air power became the spearhead of attack, blasting clear a path for his ground forces. Under this shield of air power, the Nazi hordes poured into France. The mighty Maginot Line proved no barrier against this new kind of warfare.
Only when it was too late did the people of France realize that their whole plan of defense was futile. These huge land fortresses, representing a great national effort, stand only as grim monuments to outmoded military thinking.
And what about the mighty floating fortresses that Britain relied on for control of the seas? When Hitler hurled his blitzkrieg across the water gap into Norway, the British Navy was confident that he had made a fatal mistake. By cutting Hitler's supply lines, they expected to trap his forces behind a naval blockade. But like the French army, the British Navy underestimated the tremendous war potential of air power. Planes from British aircraft carriers took to the air, but they proved no match for the land-based aviation of the Nazis. Britain's own land-based planes lacked the range to come to the rescue. So the world's mightiest navy, utterly helpless, was forced to retire to the protection of the Royal Air Force, driven back not by another navy, but by this totally new military force, air power. Hitler planted a string of air bases along the Norwegian coast, and with air power took over control of the seas in this area, ignoring the floating fortresses as completely as it ignored the land fortresses of France. He was able to move his supplies across this water gap unmolested. Over 300,000 British troops cornered, doomed men facing surrender or annihilation under the merciless pounding of Hitler's aerial spearhead. But in contrast to Norway, Dunkirk was within easy reach of Britain's land-based fighter planes. For the first time, Hitler's flying spearhead met real air opposition. The Royal Air Force gained mastery of the skies in this area through a screen of wings from shore to shore, and under this shield of superior air power, 300,000 men were safely evacuated in 4 days. The British braced themselves for immediate invasion. After Dunkirk, Hitler realized he would have to strike with an air force many times greater than the British. So, for 2 months, the invasion waited, while he equipped a chain of air bases to place his short-range aviation within striking distance of the target. And then Hitler received his first major setback. He sent over his aerial spearhead, wave after wave of planes. But the Luftwaffe, built primarily to clear a path for ground forces, proved no match for the Royal Air Force, built for war in the air. Outnumbered 3-1, the Spitfires rode the tail of the enemy, firing 8 guns to the Germans' 1. The superior quality of British men and machines overwhelmed German quantity, blasted 2,400 planes out of the sky, and broke the spearhead of the German offensive.
In winning the Battle of Britain, the gallant Royal Air Force established a new military truth in the history of war-making, that as long as a nation controls its own skies, it cannot be invaded.
Hitler's invasion plan shattered, he decided to suffocate England by cutting her lines of supply. In the Mediterranean, during the era of sea power, control had always centered around the naval strongholds of Gibraltar, Malta, Alexandria, and Haifa. In the new era of air power, the island of Crete was destined to become the commanding center of the eastern half of the Mediterranean. Recognizing the importance of Crete, Hitler, with his spearhead of short-range aviation, pushed step by step through the Balkans and amassed his strength for an aerial invasion. The British had neglected to provide Crete with an aerial defense and were confident they could defend it with their navy. The world witnessed the first clear-cut duel between sea power and air power. The Luftwaffe went to work, sinking ships, destroying ground installations, seizing airfields with parachute troops, and finally landing an army of occupation in gliders and transport planes. The first territory to be conquered entirely through air power. Another upset in war making.